Welcome to the Compass Online Campus. Our mission is navigating people to God. We are one church in thousands of locations, and that includes you from wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Brooks. I'm the online campus pastor, and I am so glad that you've decided to join us today for the experience. And I hope you've had a really great week. You know, weather in Texas is wonderful the last few days, like mid-70s. It's really great. I hope that wherever you are, that you've got great weather, that you are happy, and that things are going well. But even if not, we know that God is for you and that He loves you and that this is the place to be today. I'm just glad that you've chosen to be here today to hear a word from the Lord. And we're praying for you wherever you are joining us from. You know, we got people that join us from all over the place. Our last service, we had people from all over the country, some in different countries. And it is just amazing to see the amount of people that are joining us here at Compass and being encouraged by what they're hearing. And I want to let you know that maybe you're new, maybe you've been around for a while, but we have chat hosts that are ready to encourage you. They're ready to engage with you. They're ready to pray for you wherever you find yourself today. So please make sure that you reach out to one of our chat hosts today and let them know that you need prayer. Let them know what's going on in your life. And on our platforms, let us know where you're tuning in from. We love seeing where people are joining us from. At any rate, listen, welcome those of you joining us. In fact, I'm seeing our numbers go up right now on our platforms. It's so cool. And look, if you're a first, second, or third time guest, I would love for you to go ahead and scan the QR code that's about to pop up next to me. There it is. You can scan that. And there's also a link in the chat you can click too. But however you want to do that, I would love for you to fill out our first time guest connection card. When you fill that out, I'm going to send you a gift as a way of saying thank you for joining us today for the experience. But also, It allows me the opportunity to pray for you and see how I can pray for you. I think we could all use more prayer. So please go ahead and do that. It's the highlight of my week is reaching out to new people. Now check it out. I want to officially confirm with you and let you know that our podcast has dropped, the Compass Podcast. We are so excited about the Compass Podcast. We went ahead and launched 2 episodes of the Compass Podcast. The first season is called On the Table with Dr. Rob. Dr. Rob Maupin is one of our executive pastors here, but he's been a professor, a missionary, has lived a very colorful life, and he's going to answer your questions. And we've had so many of you ask questions for this podcast. And so the first episode is all about how Rob came to faith and his story, which is just amazing. Second episode is questions on spiritual formation, and we're recording the next episodes. Every single episode will release about every 2 weeks. So do subscribe, rate, and review. It is so powerful to hear Dr. Rob answer some of these really deep questions about faith, Christianity, the Bible, Jesus, all these different things that I think we all have questions about, want answers about. So do subscribe, and you can ask your question at compass.church/podcasts, and we will answer your question in a future episode. So very excited about that. And by the way, you could subscribe from any platform, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. Make sure that you download that. It's going to be so good. Now, we are in our series, Less is More. So good. This whole series has been all about, the way of Jesus is not building more stuff and defining yourself with your things and what you have, right? It's about defining who Jesus says that you are. And it's so interesting how Jesus flips the script on what we think is valuable, what we think defines us and makes us who we are, and what our worth amounts to. Jesus says, no, it's not in things. It's not on ego. It's not on all these things that we naturally think make us who we are. So it's been such a powerful message so far. And last week, I loved it. Last week was all about, when it comes to self, more is not better, right? Because here's what happens. More self can lead to less life. More stuff can cause us to lose identity into things. Maybe you've found that right now in your life. Maybe you're in a place where you have so much that maybe you found yourself saying, this is how I identify. This is what my life's work amounts to. My life amounts to this stuff. But you can't take it with you. Check out what Pastor Drew had to say last week about this topic. Check it out. Less is more. And that's the reality, right? Now listen, when it comes to self, more isn't better. More self can lead to less life. More can cause us to lose identity into things. And so, if you find yourself today, let us know. Reach out to one of our chat hosts. Let them know that this is something that you're dealing with. We want to pray with you, partner with us. It's gonna be really helpful to have somebody to walk you along with that and say, listen, becoming self-aware about your stuff is a really big, important step on this. So look, if you're just joining us, welcome to the online campus at Compass. Our mission is navigating people to God. We're one church in thousands of locations, and that includes you from wherever you're tuning in from. Really glad you've decided to join us today. We had a little bit of a technical issue. We're working on it right now. We'll get back to it. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us for wherever you're joining us from. I see the Huffmans right now. Huffmans, thank you so much for joining us today from Amarillo. We love the Huffmans. Want to welcome also Joy. Joy and Micah. Man, so many people joining us. I can see our numbers going up as well from all of our platforms. It's always so great. We've got a very powerful, powerful message today on this very topic of less being more, which is so opposite. It's so opposite for us to think that way. But here's what I want you to do, okay? Get your texting fingers ready, your typing fingers ready, okay? Here's the question I have for you concerning today's message. What are some counterintuitive things in life that work? Let me repeat that question. You can think about it a little bit. What are some counterintuitive things in life that work? I'll give you some examples. Okay, here's one that I thought of, okay? Actions speak louder than words. That's a counterintuitive thing that works, right? How about this one? We lead by serving. That's one. I thought that was a really good one. How about, this is a very biblical one. We love our enemies. That's a counterintuitive thing that might work. Let us know what some things are for you. I'm looking at the chats right now to see if anybody responds here. I'm going to come up with some more. How about hope for the best, but prepare for the worst? I think that's a really good one. If you're a scout, you know that's a really important one, right? So what are some counterintuitive things that work? Because here's what we're going to be talking about today with Pastor Drew, okay? What if money, this thing that I think many of us have a death grip on, money. What if money couldn't buy happiness? And less money actually meant more money. What do I mean by that? Well, you're going to have to listen to what Pastor Drew has to say today about the topic of money. And I know that this topic for a lot of us is very sensitive, but man, the way Pastor Drew handles this message is absolutely worth listening to. It is so good, so powerful, and I'm really excited for you to be here. For those of you that just joined us, welcome to the online campus at Compass. My name is Brooks, online campus pastor. I want to let you know that our podcast just dropped, so you can subscribe from any platform, Google, Apple, Spotify. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. First season of the podcast is called On the Table with Dr. Rob. First 2 episodes are down there now, so you can listen to them about 20, 25 minutes each. So good. You don't want to miss out. Make sure you listen, and it is very good. We were answering your questions about Jesus, faith, Bible, Christianity, all that stuff. Guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into our worship now. Welcome to the online campus at Compass.
Everything around me changes. I'll never that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? I've got joy. I still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength. 'Cause I built my life on Jesus. And he's never let me down. He's faithful through every season. So why would he fail now? He won't. won't fail. He won't
Well, good morning and welcome to Compass. At Compass, our mission is navigating people to God, and we are one church in multiple locations. I'm from the Roanoke location, and it's really good to be here with you this morning. My name's Jordan. And hey, before we continue in worship, we just want to take a moment and meet someone around you. So let's shake a hand, get a name, and we will continue in worship in just a second. We're going to sing a new song together today, and before we do, I just want to sing the chorus with you so it's familiar, and it goes like this. This is our God, this is who He is, He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does, He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave, let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Let's sing that again. This is our God, this is who He is, He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does, He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave, let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Walls that we call sin and shame, they were like prisons that we couldn't escape. But He came and He died and He rose. Those walls are rubble now. Remember those giants we call death and grave. They were like mountains that stood in our way. But He came and He died and He rose. Those giants are dead now. All right, let's sing this out together. This is our God, this is who He is, He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does, He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave, let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Remember that fear that took our breath away. Faith so weak that we could barely pray. But He heard every word, every whisper. And now those altars in the wilderness tell the story of His faithfulness. And never once did He fail, and He never will. This is our God, this is who He is, He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does, He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave, let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, He did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Jesus, who rescued me from that grave. Yahweh, Yahweh, who gets the glory and praise. Nobody but Jesus, who pulled me out of that pit. He did, who paid for all of our sin. Nobody but Jesus, who rescued me from that grave. Yahweh, Yahweh, who gets the glory and praise. Nobody but Him. This is our God, this is who He is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of gonna sing of the goodness of God. Amen. You may be seated. As we move into our time of communion, you should have received some communion cups from the back, but don't worry if you need anything, just raise your hand and one of our wonderful section hosts will bring you a communion cup. And if you're online, we would love for you to join us in this moment with juice or crackers. And in just a moment, we will all pray and take communion together. So that song we just sang, it gets me every single time. It's known in our family as my mom's healing song. You see, a couple of years ago, she had a major brain surgery. She had to learn how to walk again. It was slow. It was tedious. It was so hard. But that song was and is our anthem. And I would always cling to the chorus. I love it. It's so beautiful. All my life, you've been faithful. Until the day of her surgery, and I was driving. And I just felt so helpless. I was scared. I was sad. And if I'm honest with you, I was mad. And I just started screaming and crying in my car. And after a little bit, it was amazing because the part in verse 1 that says, all my days I've been held in your hands, was just flashing through my head like that. And I experienced what people talk about, God's unexplainable peace. And in that moment, I knew that God was there. I knew that I was in his hands. I knew that my mom was in his hands. And I knew that the doctors were his hands. And God's goodness and his will and his sovereignty were in control in that moment. Because he's faithful, no matter what hard things life brings. And as we hold these elements that represent the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus, I just want us all to remember that we are held in his hands. We're a part of his plan. And I hope and I pray that we take this time during communion each week to just rest and reset in him, to take our things, to take our eyes off the things of this world, and to focus on who Jesus is and the victory he claimed on the cross. Let's pray for this moment of communion together. Father God, we just come to you. We are so grateful for this time as a church to honor you, to remember you. And Father, I just pray for those moments when we don't feel you working, that we realize that you are working, you are for us, you are sovereign over all. Lord, thank you for the hope that we can choose through your son, Jesus. It's in your mighty name. Amen. Let's take communion together.
God, you're so
can take a seat. Hey, welcome once again to Compass Christian Church, where our mission is navigating people to God. My name is Nathan Lewis. I get to serve on staff as one of the pastors here. And you know, over the last 2 years, we have been in this journey that we have been calling Unstoppable. It's been a generosity discipleship journey for all of us here at Compass, and we have seen God do incredible things: salvation, baptisms, marriages restored, strongholds and addictions broken, so many different things. But we believe that he's not done yet. We often say around here that the best is yet to come, our best days are ahead, and we are believing in that. And so if you have been a part of this unstoppable journey with us over these last 2 years, we just want to say thank you for your generosity. And we also want to encourage you and implore you to finish well, to finish strong. But if you've not joined that journey with us, if you would love to participate alongside God in generosity, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can always practice generosity by going to compass.church/give. You can utilize our Compass app as well. But honestly, for all of us in here, you can utilize these sweet little envelopes that we have right in the back of the seat in front of you. Go ahead, you can put your offering in there, seal it up, and then there are black generosity boxes scattered throughout our campus at each of our exits that you can utilize. But once again, thank you so much for being a generous people in a generous church and joining us on this journey. I would love to pause for just a minute and pray over you, pray over our offering, and pray over all it is that God is going to continue to do. So would you join me in prayer? God, we thank you so much for what it is that you have done over the last couple of years, and really and truthfully before that, and everything that you are going to do in the future. And so God, we are here this morning excited. We open our hands and our hearts to you to use our gifts and our offerings as you see fit to make your name great. We thank you so much for Jesus, and it's in his name, amen. We're all searching for something. Something significant to be a part of. We want our lives to mean something. We want to do more than just exist. Because if simply existing is the point, then what's the point? Lately, though, there's not much we would want to be a part of. Or is there? God has been moving and is continuing to move amidst the chaos. We get to be a part of what he's doing. Your next step to be a part of it starts here. Hey, if it's your first time here with us this morning, we want to say thanks so much for being here. Thanks for taking time to join us this morning. We would love to get to know you, though. We don't want you to just show up and just kind of fade into the mist this morning. We want to get to know who you are, get to know your name. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can help us do that. The first is there's this connection card also in the back of the seat in front of you. If you could fill out your name, phone number, email address, social security number, just making sure you're awake. No, we're not going to ask for that, but we would love for you to fill this out, and then at the end of the service, head out these doors, and across from the fireplace is this area we call guest gathering. We would love to meet you there, give you a gift just to say thanks for being here, and like I said, get to know you and your story a little bit. But there's another way that you can help us do that as well too, and it's this thing that you just saw a video on called Starting Point. Starting Point is the perfect, get this, starting point. Haha, see what we did there? But it's the perfect starting point for you to come and to see who it is that God has called Compass to be, how it is we are being that thing and that family and that church, and how it is that you can be a part of it. So really and truthfully, whether you're new here or you've been here for several years, Starting Point is the perfect way to get connected into what it is that God is doing here. And here's the thing, it happens at the very next service. So no excuses. Like just swing by the coffee shop, grab some coffee, and then you can go to this thing at 11:30. You can also find out more information about it by going to compass.church/starting point or scanning that QR code right there. But as we said earlier, like we believe that God is doing incredible things here and that he's not done. And one of the things that we believe God has called us to do is pour into the next generation. And so we have several things coming up for the next generation. One is actually happening just a few weeks at the end of this month. It's called Student Conference. So if you are a student in here or if you know a student, make sure that they are a part of this March 24th and 25th. It's only $50 to be a part of it. All 4 of our campuses are coming and they are converging on this place. It's gonna be wild and crazy and amazing. You can go to compass.church/events to register your student for that. And here's the thing too, is that when you sign your student up for conference, we are going to send you a discount code to get the early bird pricing on summer camp. Because summer camp's right around the corner too. It's almost April, y'all. This is ridiculous. The year is going way too fast. So summer camp's gonna be here before you know it. We're also doing kids camp as well. We're having the folks at WinShape come back out to help us tell our kids about Jesus this summer as well too. You can go to compass.church/camps to be a part of either one of those, whether it's students or kids. It is going to be a life-changing week for the next generation. So again, thank you so much for being here. We are gonna get ready to hear a message from Pastor Drew that is absolutely amazing. But before we do that, check out this video.
Hello everyone, my name is Philip Kemp. I'm the local outreach pastor for Compass Christian Church. And as we get closer to the end of Unstoppable, I want to give you an update on what your commitments have done in our local community and how they have impacted our local partners. Dallas Christian College and Ozark Christian College are dedicated to training up the leaders for the next generation. These are the leaders that will take on the church in the future to come. Our partner SOS provide mentoring programs and food to at-risk kids in areas like North Fort Worth and our North Richland Hills campus. We work with organizations that help single moms and families, like the Gatehouse. The Gatehouse helps single moms and their kids rebuild their lives. They will do counseling, job training, and really rebuild some of the things that they lost in the past. Pregnancy Help for You provides life-affirming solutions to expectant mothers. Our support helps this organization provide education and help to families in need. Grace is one of our long-standing partners that provides relief to our local community. I want you to hear from Shonda about the work that Grace is doing.
Hi everyone, I am Shonda Schaefer, and I am so honored and blessed to not only be the CEO of Grace, but to be a member of Compass Church and to see the good work that you all have been doing with the Unstoppable campaign. I'll tell you, you are here at Donation Station, which is kind of the hub for some of the work that we do at Grace. As you probably know, we do crisis intervention in our community. That means anyone who's suffering from a type of crisis, who just needs a little hand up, we work with. That could be financial, it could be legal, it could be medical, it could be housing. But one of the cool things that we do for this community, it's kind of a secondary benefit, is we are a recycler. We get to bring in all of your gently used items and turn them around for either use by our clients, or in our case, sometimes we're able to sell those goods for the financial resources to be able to continue our work in the programs. Having Compass make sure that we had the initial seed money to start this project, and now coming back with some of the finishing dollars has been incredibly, incredibly helpful. So now we're in this space and we're seeing up to 500 and sometimes even 800 cars a day. So this is definitely a community-wide project. We have a lot of people coming here and allowing us to take over some of their gently used items. And I think more importantly, I can tell you that when God talks to me, he tells me, plant seeds for the future. You may not be the one to see them grow, but you need to plant seeds. And that's what happened here. This facility and all of the revenue that we get on a monthly basis will continue on and on and on, way beyond our generation, so that Grace can continue to do the programs that are so vitally necessary for our community. So this isn't just an investment in today's Grace, this is investment for years to come, and I can't tell you how appreciative we are. We're really excited about what's coming down the road for Grace. We think that we're in a position to expand our transitional housing program and housing in general, which I would argue is probably the biggest crisis our community is facing right now. Working class people cannot afford to live on a basic salary anymore. So we've got to do some things to address the housing issues in Northeast Tarrant County and beyond. So we're going to be working on a project there. There will be more to come, but I'm telling you, this campaign, this facility has positioned us to be able to be flexible and meet the needs that change every day for our community. So we're going to keep going, and I hope you keep going, because this is unstoppable, and together, we're all unstoppable.
So proud of our church, so proud of you. So many of you have been so generous, and it's really helping us expand our reach to help others and to grow our church and to be unstoppable for Jesus. And all I can say is keep it up, church. Keep being generous. God is just giving us opportunities to write more beautiful stories for him, and that's what we get passionate about. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful from the bottom of my heart. We want to thank you, and we need to continue. We need to finish strong. There's an envelope at the seat back of every seat here today, and I want to encourage you, if you've never even started with Unstoppable, you can start today. You can be a part of that. There's giving boxes in the back and as well as in the lobby. My name is Drew. I am one of the pastors here at this church. Welcome to Compass. Our mission is navigating people to God. And if you're a guest, I would love to meet you at a place called Guest Gathering right after this message across from the fireplace in the lobby. We love to meet our new guests, and we would love to put a name to a face, and we have a gift for you as well. We're in a series called Less is More, Less is More. And we kicked off with the idea last week that we often fall for the myth of more, that more stuff is the solution, that more is better. But we find out in life that that's not always true. We got more of something and we regretted it. We got more and we found ourselves with a number of things we didn't ask for. We learned that more was not always better. Sometimes less is more. And today we're going to apply that concept to money. And listen, I want to say to those of you, if you came here today for the first time and you feel like anytime you ever go to a church, they only talk about money, we are going to talk about money today. The reality is at Compass, we don't talk about money that often, usually once or twice a year specifically about giving, but you hit today. But hopefully we can be open together, we can learn together. And if you grew up in church, you probably know that Jesus actually talked more about money than he talked about heaven. He told some 35 stories. We call them parables, which he used to illustrate the kingdom of God. 16 of those stories were about money. But the interesting thing that might shock you is that Jesus never asked for any money for himself, ever. He talked about it all the time, but he never asked for any, except on one occasion we know of. He asked somebody to borrow a coin, and he did a coin trick, which is really cool. Jesus is really cool. And he just used that coin as an illustration, and then he gave the money back. But what was he up to? What was he trying to prove? When it comes to money and possessions, Jesus really was up to something, but as we find out, it wasn't about anybody's money. Or maybe you came here last week and you heard us talking about less is more, and you're wondering, like, what's he gonna do with this? Like, is he gonna say less money is more money? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, amen, right? No, more money is more money. Let's just be honest, more money leads to more opportunity and more flexibility and more impact and more influence. So it's not less money is more money. That's not the point of today, which I point out because you might have heard even well-meaning preachers stand on the stage and talk about money in a way that might make us feel bad, like God is anti-money. And as a result, we go through life and we try to build wealth and we might like feel bad about it. But, like, is God okay with me building wealth? There's so much guilt around money, but let me be clear. God is, I don't think at all, anti-money. God is not anti-money. God knows that everyone has to eat and live indoors, right? like God is for, at the very least, food, clothing, and shelter. And so he's not anti-money, because all those things require money. So it's not less money is more, but I think it might be less worry about money is more, less preoccupation with money is more, less being consumed with money is more. I think that's what God is interested in. Some of us are just consumed with the thought of money, and it keeps us up at night, and it's the cause of marital spats and relationship quarrels and conflicts. We worry ad nauseum about money, and others, we don't worry about it at all. We spend it as soon as we get it. Some of us have no money, and then we get paid, and you can sing it with me if you want. We fancy like Applebee's on a date night. Got the Bourbon Street steak and the Oreo shake with some whipped cream on the top two. 2 straws, 1 check. Girl, I got you, right? I mean, see? But we're like, amen. But, you know, some of us are consumed and we're worried and anxious about money, but others of us, we go another way. We just spend it like as soon as we get it. But honestly, I don't think either of those are great options. And the good news is actually, Jesus gives us a third option in the story that he tells today. And I want to, it's not a disclaimer. It's just to get ready for it, man. Like, this is one of the most bizarre stories that Jesus tells. It might be the most bizarre story in the New Testament that Jesus tells. And you're gonna get into the middle of the story and you're gonna go, man, I can't believe this is in the Bible, because that's what I do. I read this, I'm like, I can't believe this is in the Bible, but it's in the Bible and it's worth looking at today. It's about money. So Luke 16, if you have your Bibles today, Luke 16, if you have a Bible app on your smartphone or an iPad or something with you, whatever it is, Luke 16, of course I'll have it right up here on the screen. Jesus is telling this story to his disciples, and I just want to reiterate what's happening here is he's telling the story to his disciples, but he's always aware of who's in the room or who's in the area. And in the area, there are Pharisees, teachers of the law that are in the area, and there are townspeople. So just keep that in mind as he tells this story. Jesus told this story to his disciples. There was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. That's okay, right? Sometimes we want wise people to handle our money. There's a lot of wisdom in that. He has this manager handling his affairs, and one day a report came that the manager was wasting his employer's money. So the employer called him in and said, "What's this I hear about you? Get your report in order because you're gonna be fired." So Jesus, he says there's this rich man that has this manager and he is not handling his money well at all, and he gets wind of the fact that his manager has some side hustles going. And so he sends him an email and he says, hey, word on the street is you're not dealing with my stuff well. You're not being very accountable. You're not being very honest. You're not representing me well with my stuff, so you're fired. But before he lets him go, he says, listen, I need you to kind of tidy up all the loose ends, send me the reports, and then pack up your desk. You're done. I'll pay you out, but we're finished doing business together. And then Jesus continues this story because he was a master storyteller. It says this, the manager thought to himself, now what? My boss has fired me. I don't have the strength to dig ditches. I'm too proud to beg. I like that. I'm not really an outdoorsy type, right? And then he says, I know how to ensure that I'll have plenty of friends who will give me a home when I am fired. So suddenly he finds himself, this guy in Jesus' story, with a little bit of time and a little bit of opportunity to figure out where he is going to go and anybody that he's going to take, if anybody's going to actually take him in and take care of him. So he comes up with a plan, verse 5. So he invited each person who owed money to his employer to come and discuss the situation. He asked the first one, how much do you owe my master? And I'm thinking, man, this is the problem. You should know that, right? Like no wonder this guy got fired, right? How much do you owe him? And the man replied, I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil. I love the first century. I mean, I don't know what that even means, right? But it must be worth something. I don't know. I've been to those little olive oil stores, and I think a gallon is pretty expensive. So this is a lot of money. I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil. So the manager told him, take the bill, quickly change it to 400 gallons. Now, I don't care who you are. That's a pretty good deal, right? Pretty good deal. He cuts it in half. And then he says to the next guy, how much do you owe my employer? Again, you should have known that, dude. You're the money manager. Anyway, I owe him 1,000 bushels of wheat, was the reply. Here, the manager said, take the bill and change it to 800 bushels. Not quite as generous. I don't think he liked that guy quite as much. So he gets 50% discount. One guy gets a 20% discount. He's calling all the others up. He's going through the Rolodex or whatever they did, and he's looking at all of the debtors. Now, I'll tell you what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if the people in Jesus' story are hearing this and have mixed emotions. If you're on the owing side, it's like, wow, that was a good deal. I owed 800, now I only have to pay half. Then people who are on the rich people's side are like, what a crook, no wonder this guy's getting the axe. But this guy in Jesus' story, he is leveraging the moment. He knew that the people would be grateful that he cut them some slack, and then they were probably like, hey, thanks so much, bro. If you ever need anything, let me know. And in the back of his mind, the manager's probably thinking, oh, don't worry, I will. And so this manager gives all of the master's debtors these big discounts so he can provide for himself after he gets canned, because we know what's already happening. We know he's done, right? He's getting canned. But now this dude has just pulled off some insider trading, and you might be thinking, man, he is so going to jail when the master figures this all out. That's what's gonna happen, right? But remember, Jesus uses parables to prove a point. In every parable, there's someone who represents God. In every parable, there's someone who represents the people in Jesus' audience. In every parable, there's someone that represents Jesus, and there's someone who represents you and me. And here's the twist in the story. I love this. This is the part you won't believe. I don't believe it's in the Bible. I really don't. I just don't. It's really flies in the face of conventional biblical wisdom. But here's what happens when the master finds out. He finds out about this guy's plan, and it says this in verse 8. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. That's in the Bible. The master commended the dishonest rascal because he acted shrewdly. That just makes me laugh. The rich man gives the dishonest guy a high five and says, well played, dude. Great idea. Well played. You finished well there. The guy had thought it through with his future in mind. Despite limited time and opportunity, he was thinking about his future. And of course, Jesus' audience, maybe like you hearing it for the first time, if you're reading this story for the first time, I don't know, or maybe you've heard it before, but anyway, they're hearing it for the first time. I think they're confused. They're like, wait a minute, this guy isn't in trouble? This rich man isn't angry? So Jesus has them right where he wants them. He has me right where he wants me. I can tell you that. I'm riveted to this thing as I'm reading it. And Jesus then does something really smart. He pulls out of the parable and he begins to teach the lesson about worldly wealth. He wants his audience to know, okay? He wants them to know that the way God views wealth and money and possessions is so different than the way we view wealth and money and possessions. And here's how he views it. This is the lesson. This is the takeaway. This is the application of the parable of the unjust, dishonest money manager. If you have your Bible, it says something about the unjust servant or the unjust manager. And he pulls out of the parable and he looks at us and he looks at his first century audience, and here's what he says. It is true that the children of this world are more shrewd. They think things through more deeply in dealing with the world around them than are the children of the light. And here's the lesson. Here's the lesson, he says. Now listen to me. If you don't really understand anything else that you just read, listen to this. Use your worldly resources to benefit what? Others. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then when your possessions are what? Because they will be gone. They will be gone. They will welcome you to an eternal home. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then, when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you into eternal homes. One translation says eternal dwellings. The people of this world, he calls them children. The people who live their lives as if this is all there is to this life. The people who live as only there's a birth certificate and a death certificate. The people that live their life as what you see is what you get, and this is all there is to life. The people of this world, he says, are more shrewd. They are more thoughtful. They think things through better than the people of this light, people of the light. And the people of the light, in that particular context, he was talking about the Jewish people. that were to inherit the eternal promises from God, and that God was going to do some fabulous things through them. In today's context, he's speaking to you and me, Christ followers. And he's saying that the people who have the covenants, the people who have the promises of God, sometimes just aren't as thoughtful and don't think things through as well as the people that just assume that all there is to this life is this life, and that if there's a God, he just really is not that interested in me. And the money manager was commended for taking full advantage of his limited time and his limited opportunity. Jesus is like, this dude isn't getting commended because he was dishonest. He was getting commended because he took full advantage of his time and his opportunity here on earth. And that's what Jesus is trying to get us to understand as well. When it comes to money and wealth, we've only got a short amount of time in this life. And so we need to think, how do I get maximum use out of money when the opportunity comes my way? This is so powerful. And Jesus leans in and he gets very, very specific. And he gives an imperative. He gives a command to those who claim to be his followers. And if you aren't yet a Jesus follower, I still think this is great financial advice, so I would pay attention. But if you're a Jesus follower, you definitely should listen, because Jesus leans in and he says, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves so that when it is gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. That's the NIV. Kind of strange if you think about it. Kind of a bizarre story. I mean, what does Jesus mean here? What does he mean? What is the bottom line? Well, listen, it looks like to me that the implications are that there's something that you and I can do with temporary wealth during this little itty-bitty slot of time that we have in this world that makes an eternal difference. So consequently, Luke is writing this, and Jesus is talking to this first century audience, and they certainly probably didn't understand exactly what he was talking about at the moment. But his point is clear, that your money and your possessions, my money and my possessions, are a means, not the end. It's a means to an end that goes beyond this life. And what Jesus is trying to get the crowd to understand, and he wants us to understand it too, is the resources we have right now have the potential to make a forever difference. Listen to me. The resources that you and I have right now have the potential. Use the word potential because they're not going to make a difference if we don't release some of them, okay? The resources we have right now have the potential to make a forever difference. And I know this is so personal. I know it's so personal to talk about this. And I know it hits home. And I know some of you are thinking, gosh, I wish he would just get through with this. We get that money sermon checked off the list. We can get on to next week and talk about the fruit of the Spirit, which is what we're talking about. Amen? Just get it done, okay? But I'm telling you right now, Jesus is saying the resources we have right now have the potential to make a forever difference. And if Jesus is right, if he is right, and I believe Jesus, I always go with Jesus is right. I always go with Jesus is right. Always. Something about a guy who defeats death and gets buried and then gets resurrected. I'm going with that guy, okay? And so if Jesus is right, and I believe he's right, then we shouldn't view just a percentage of what we have as what should be made available to God, but we should view 100% of what we have as a potential means to a greater end. If you're a Christian, you've always been taught that a percentage of your income belongs to God. But honestly, we should view 100% of what we have as belonging to him. And so Jesus gets to verse 13. This is one of the key verses in the story. And he says this, here's why, guys. No one can serve two masters, for you'll just hate one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and you'll despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So here's the question I think that is, we have to ask ourselves, and whether a follower of Christ or not, here's what it is. How can I leverage more of what I have as a means to an end that is outside of what benefits me? How do I do that? Because you may have already experienced this, okay? But here is what I've discovered, and I've been a Christian for 45 years. I was 11 years old when I gave my life to Jesus. And here's what I've experienced in the last 4.5 decades. Here's what I've learned, okay? I have learned that generosity is where joy is found. That's what I've learned. That generosity is where joy is found. Now, Michelle and I, we grew up in homes where generosity was a way of life. Generosity was normal. So when we got married, we decided that we were going to give at least 10% of our income to our church. we decided collectively that we would give other gifts to other causes we love as we were moved, okay? And look, I know this might seem foreign to some of you. This whole idea of generosity might seem weird to you, but I'm telling you, there's joy in generosity. Generosity is where joy begins. And if you've never done this, I want to suggest to you now to take a percentage of your income and give it away, okay? Because we should be the ones in control of our lives, not let a lifestyle choose how much we give. This is what shrewd thinking, forward thinking people do. They don't think in dollars, they think in terms of percentages. Now listen to me, okay? The reason I think you should choose to live on a percentage of your income is, wait for it, ready? Because you're gonna live on a percentage of your income, okay? How's that for profound? Okay? Why wouldn't you choose what percentage you're going to live on rather than to let a lifestyle choose it for you? I know some people, they live on 100% of their income. They're not gonna like this message, okay? They're not gonna like it. I know people that live on 100%, they give nothing away. And I know this, I can tell you, they're some of the most miserable people I've ever known. Okay? They are obsessed with money, they give nothing away, and they are joyless. I know people that live on 90% and they've found some joy in their life. I know people that live on 80%. I want to tell you a true story, okay? You're not going to believe this story, okay? And so if you don't believe the story, I want you to come up to me and I'm going to give you the guy's phone number and you can call him, okay? Just so you can verify it. He's a good guy. He won't mind a few hundred calls. No big deal. His name is Steve Moore. This is his picture, okay? Steve is the pastor, just finished being the pastor at 10 Mile Christian Church in Meridian, Idaho. 10 Mile Christian, okay? He just handed over the baton to a young man. This young man is 29 years old. His name is Henry, and he's a good guy. I've met Henry. But I know Steve and his wife, Bethine. Steve and Bethine were married in 1972. When they were married, they had $300 and a Plymouth Roadrunner. I had to look it up and Google it. That's a really cool car. Okay, he had $300 and a Plymouth Roadrunner. And they got called to be the pastors at 10 Mile Christian Church. Together they decided, listen, as long as we're employed here, as long as we're getting a paycheck, we're gonna start giving 10%, but every January, we're gonna raise our giving 1%. We're gonna raise it 1% every January. So after the first year, we're gonna give 11%. And after the second year, we're gonna give 12%. And after the third year, we're gonna give 13%. And after the fourth year, we're gonna give 14% to our church. So they just said, we're gonna raise our giving 1% every January. We're gonna do that every year. So Steve receives the calling to be the pastor of 10 Mile Christian Church. And Steve and Bethine, at the time, they bought in. Things were less expensive then. They bought a small farm, very small farm, but it had like 20, 25 acres on it. And they went to work pastoring their church. And year after year, their church grew and became larger. And every year, Steve and Bethine kept their promise. They increased their giving. He pastored the church for 47 years. For 47 years, he pastored the church faithfully. He retired last year. He and Bethine kept their promise to God that every year they would give 1% more every year. He and Bethine, when they retired, were giving 57% of their income back to their church. Now listen to me. I hesitate to tell you this story because some of you are gonna go, hey pastor, I think you should do that, you know? You've been here 21 years, so you do the math. Anyway, so if that was just the story, it's an amazing story. This pastor who started giving 57% of his income away. But when he retired last year, they sold their little farm that they had purchased in 1972. And they sold the farm. Again, you're not gonna believe this, so just let me know. I'll give you his you can text him at least, or call him afterward. But he sold the farm that they had purchased in 1972. He sold it and he said, Pastor Drew, he said, we did the math, we added it up, and we sold it for 47 times more than what we purchased it for. Millions. Just happened to be situated outside of Boise in an area where they were developing and growing and they needed the land. And Steve said to me, he said, here's what you need to know. I'm not that smart. I'm not that smart. And he and Bethine, living on 43% of their income, took that money, the proceeds, and they bought their dream ranch, 1,450 acres. They bought this now we're talking way out, okay? They went way out to buy that land. Now, isn't that amazing? And this is what I want to encourage you to do, okay? I want everybody in the room to start giving 57%. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But here's the thing, okay? I want to encourage you to do this week. Start with a percentage. And think about this. What percentage is generous for you? Only you can answer that. Because I believe that generosity is where joy is found. So what percentage is generous for you? It's all in play. It's all available. How do we use more of what comes our way and what sits in our bucket of resources to do things that are not simply for us? And the number of dollars is irrelevant. It's about pre-deciding ahead of time what generosity looks like. Now, some of you, you've never one time thought about this before, and I understand that. You've never grown up around generosity, and you've never thought about this. You've heard of people that tithe and give 1/10 of their income. This room is full of tithers in this church. You can't even fathom doing that, and you might, throw a random $20 bill in the giving box out there or whatever makes you feel better, but you've never really thought about it. And let me tell you, it's tragic, not for you. I'm sorry, not for Compass, but for you. Because there is a joy and generosity that is unmistakable, and you've never really experienced that joy before. And here's the thing that Jesus challenges us with in this story. He wants us to understand when it comes to money, here's what he's trying to understand. He's trying to get you to understand, and what he's trying to get me to understand. When it comes to money, I don't own this. This isn't mine. And if we think that way, right, we're in so much better shape than if we just think it's all ours. We talked about this last week. We love that word mine. We love that word more. And I think you have to ask yourself a very important question. In this life, do I want more stuff or do I want more stories? Do I want more stuff or do I want more stories? We talked about this last week. Do you want to be selfish or selfless? Do I want more stuff or more stories? I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. In the end, when you're gone, nobody is gonna talk about your stuff. They're not. In the end, they're gonna either tell stories about how generous you are, or they're gonna have an estate sale and sell all your stuff. They're gonna sell it all. What do you want? Do you want more stuff, or do you want more stories? It's up to you. I've already made the decision. And I know, life is expensive. And yeah, we gotta make a living, and we gotta pay our bills, and we gotta get our kids through school. I get that. I'm not advocating irresponsible living. I'm just saying, I think you should factor this in. What do you want? More stuff or more stories? Because when our time is up here on earth, nobody's gonna talk about our stuff, but they're gonna tell stories about us. Every week we share in our services about how the generosity of so many have allowed us to do so many things. The church exists because of the generosity of many of you in this room. Your generosity makes those stories possible. Every child that comes to faith, every baptism story. We had a few weekends ago, we had 79 baptisms, and then we've had some each week since then. Every time that happens, every time God's writing a story, every adult that gets reconnected through Rooted, every marriage that gets restored, every student that goes to church camp and student conference, every life that gets support and encouragement from Celebrate Recovery, those are life-changing. Those stories get to be your story for the rest of your life. I talked about student conference a second ago. I'm telling you, please listen to me. If you have a student, junior high and high school student, get them to student conference. I think it's like $50, something like that. It's gonna be amazing. It could turn their world upside down in a good way. I'm just telling you, get them there. This is where lives get changed, okay? This is where lives get changed. And I just wanna encourage you. Every time I walk into this building and I see a baptism or a life change, I think to myself, that's a small part of my story. And I don't miss the money that we gave. I don't miss it. So for those of you who have been generous, let me say thank you. It matters so much. I hope you never lose sight of that. Now look at verse 10 and notice again what Jesus says here. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with what? Much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. I want you to think about Steve and his story. Just think about that as you read this. So if you've not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you've not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? Let me think about his story. What Jesus is trying to get at, no matter how much you have, no matter where you think it ultimately came from, our money, our wealth, our possessions, not only is it a means to an end, not only is it a tool from the kingdom of God's perspective, it's also a test as well. Money is a test. It's like the manager in the parable. We have a little bit of time and a little bit of money and a little bit of resources for a short amount of time, and we're basically being tested to determine whose kingdom we're most devoted to. The bookended kingdom of this world, or the kingdom in which there is more to this life than what we can see that goes beyond the bookends of our physical lives. And maybe as we've been talking about this, you're like, but Drew, Jesus uses a guy who's a manager of someone else's money, and he's talking about not being faithful with other people's things. I'm not the manager in the story. I'm the owner. It's my money, my paycheck, my house. You should look at the deed. My name is on it. It's my car. I have the title. I own this stuff. No, you don't. And if our money could talk, I think it would confirm what Jesus is saying at the end of his teaching. It would say, I'll still be here when you're gone. And the moment you think you own me, I actually own you. You don't have money. Money has you. Because we all, like the middleman in the parable, are in fact managers. We are not owners. Because if we're going to leave it behind, you don't actually own it. You're just managing it for a time. So if we don't own it, then who does? God. And if in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and if in the beginning God created mankind in his image, and if in the beginning he made us stewards of this planet, and he gave each of us a little bit of time and a little bit of opportunity and a little bit of resources to manage, then suddenly this makes perfect sense. And for those of you who are Jesus followers, for those of you who have already settled the issue that there's more to this life than this life, for those of you that wrestle with this because you hate the greed that bubbles up inside of you sometimes, you hate the resistance that you feel when there's an opportunity to do more and your heart's saying yes, but your actions say no. Maybe you need to start by asking, do I want more stuff or do I want more stories? Do I want more stuff or do I want to write some stories? I think deep down, nobody really wants more stuff. I think at the end of the day, no one will say, hey, for me, the meaning of life is accumulation, consumption, upgrades, and fashion, and a house full of stuff. That's the meaning of my life. That's not you, is it? Is that you? You want to spend the rest of your life like that? I mean, nobody does. You don't want that said about you. Do you want this to be your epitaph? Well, he ate, he drank, he was married, then he died. That's not a legacy. That's a life poorly lived. That's a tragedy. Nobody chooses this on purpose. But if you don't decide, culture will decide it for you. Because stuff is our default mechanism. Our appetite for stuff will swallow up our resources. We are born with a desire for more. We think more is more. We think more is the answer. We think more is the solution. But Jesus very much taught the principle that less is more. In fact, this is interesting. Remember I told you Jesus is speaking to the disciples and there's like people in the town behind him, and there are some Pharisees, the leaders, the religious leaders of the day are behind him. And Jesus finished that day. He says something very interesting happens. The whole time Jesus has been teaching, this group of religious leaders is leaning in on the conversation, and they're always hanging around to see if they could trap Jesus with something that he said that was wrong. But after he said all this, look what Luke writes. The Pharisees, who loved money, heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. They were sneering. So we got two options. We can be like Jesus calls us to be, and we can have our resources be a means to an even greater end that will make a forever difference in this life of something that benefits others, or we can be a Pharisee. The Pharisees who love their money were sneering at Jesus. By the way, anybody remember the names of any of these Pharisees? Yeah, me neither. Let me pray over you. God, never an easy message to preach. This gets to the heart of it, of the matter. Gets real personal. God, help us to begin to be so generous that because of our generosity, new stories get written. Help us to be people who want less stuff and more stories. Help us to understand that the resources we have right now have the potential to make a forever difference. And help us to remember to give you all the credit for it. In Jesus' name, amen. Love you guys.
Powerful sermon from Pastor Drew today. I loved what he said at the end there. He said, the resources we have right now have the potential to make a forever difference. So I hope this week, as you're going about your week, that maybe you keep some of these things in mind. By the way, I would love for you to share your takeaway in the chat. I'm really glad that you joined us this week. I want a couple reminders real quick before we log off. Number one, the podcast is now up. From wherever you get your podcasts. You can also go to compass.church/podcasts, and you can see it there. And you can click on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts from, you can get it there. We launched the first 2 episodes, so good, about 25 minutes each episode. It's worth your time to listen through. Very, very quality stuff. And we answer some of your questions about spiritual formation, sort of organized religion, that sort of thing. So the second thing is, look, if you're a first, second, or third time guest, I'm so glad you decided to join us today for the experience. I would love for you to go ahead and scan the QR code that we're about to put up here, or you can click on the link in the chat. However you want to do either of those things, look, I would love for you to fill this connection card out because I want to send you a gift as a way of saying thank you for joining us today for the experience. Now listen, part of this too is me reaching out to you and seeing how I can pray for you. I would love to text you or call you this week and just see how I can pray for you. I think we all could use more prayer, especially with these topics. I think these are not easy topics to discuss, right? When it comes to money, when it comes to stuff, when it comes to the things that maybe we've worked so hard for in life, and we're finding ourselves, our identity, and kind of slipping into those things and not Jesus. So man, we would love to pray with you over those things. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next week as we continue in our series, Less is More. God bless.